All right, we are going to be looking at assembling our MachineVise. So we've been spending time on this the last couple weeks, really focusing mostly on, or really exclusively on, each one of the individual parts and the detailed drawings. And then we've been introducing the fundamentals of assembly. So now it's time to start looking at putting these parts together into an assembly, and then ultimately creating an assembly drawing so that somebody can also put it together. So we're going to go to our Vice learning plan. And the top part is what we've been kind of looking at and kind of going back and forth with. So with the videos that we have out there and the time that we've spent and the feedback that you've been getting, make sure that you're, finishing those up, putting those in good order. And like I said, creating those detailed drawings, putting the dimensions on, it might sometimes feel like it isn't the most fun thing to do. But I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to keep saying this, it is the most important part of the process of creating models and getting them so that they can be manufactured, because that's what people who are going to manufacture it with are going to look at. And if something isn't fitting together, guess where they look? First place. They pull the drawing and they see if the part was made to the drawing. If it was made to the drawing and it's still not fitting together, then they look who made that drawing. And guess what? They're going to be coming for you. And I'm not saying in a bad way, but it's a learning process. Even out in industry, there will be little hiccups that come along, and you might not, get everything the first time. And that's expected. But yet, as we're here at WCTC, we're training and thinking about those things ahead of time. And that's really what we're focusing on and applying here. So, so make sure that you're spending time on these drawings. And if you have questions as you're going along, don't just hand in to hand in. All right. Don't just put a dimension to put a dimension. Make sure that you're, applying that standard, looking at the handouts that I gave you, looking at the notes that I've been marking up. And then if something doesn't make sense, don't hesitate to reach out and let me know, because we can certainly meet. You can come to class. I know that we have more, I think we have the majority of the people that have been virtual lately, and that's okay. That's the flexibility that we have in this class. But also don't forget that sometimes things like communication and kind of trying to figure out these details, sometimes it's better to be in person to go over those things. Okay. So, so you're always welcome to come back. So really these first three we've been working on. All right. And I think there's about, 7 or 8 drawings that you guys have been doing. So, so if you're all set with that, you're in a good place. If you're putting on the final details, you're still in a good place. So now we're going to be looking at, starting with number 4 here, create an assembly model and a corresponding assembly drawing. Okay, the model and the drawing. So tonight we're going to get started on creating this model. Now, we will be putting this on a WCTC drawing border, okay, which I have created. We've experienced those. We worked with it already. So you should have it in your working directory, but it will be required that you're going to use that 3 view assembly border. You're going to save the assembly model as its part number. So the part number is 25,000, because all of the individual parts have been kind of in a series, if you would, that started with 25 and so on. So the assembly, the parent, if you would, of all of those little parts is going to be the 25,000. So that'll be the part number. We're going to apply that ANSI Y 14.5 standard when we're laying this out, so orthographic projection. But then we're also going to now shift over to the rules of assemblies when we create this drawing. So I'll be pointing out some of the things that you want to keep in mind, but I do have down here an assembly guide for you. So if we click on the assembly, this PDF, I do have handouts in the room of this in hard copy form, but this is going to be the guide. Now, I am going to preface this with, there's a couple things on here that we need to fix up, and it's by design, because I want to show you how to do this when you encounter these items. But here is the assembly on the appropriate border, and this is done in Creo. So it's not an AutoCAD drawing, it was done in Creo. So what we see here is really what you're aspiring to. So what I encourage you to do is, I'm not saying that it has to be perfectly like this with the balloons in the same order and all that kind of stuff. You certainly can have some, creativity when it comes to that, but this is your guide. And if you start going off on your own and doing some different things, then just be prepared that you may get some feedback that it needs to be fixed if it's not abiding by the standard. Okay. So my expectation is that before you hand in, and this is for the individual parts as well, that you are looking at any guides that are available out there. Okay. So, so this is going to be that for the assembly drawing. Okay. So, so we'll be getting back to this a little bit later. It's kind of like the icing on the cake after we put the model together. But if you wanted to keep this up just for, you know, referencing, that's totally fine too. But what we are going to do and focus on at the beginning here is getting this assembly started and put together. Okay. We've done a couple assemblies. They've been a little bit easier, right? They've been a little, we've done the one on the tutorial with the pulley and the two supports out of the book. Then we had that drill jig assembly that we worked on. And then now there's, you know, more parts in this one. I'm not going to say this is a hard assembly, but it's more complex because there's more parts to put together. Okay. So, so I wanted to give you some guidance on that. So I have Creo open, and let me see here. I have this open. I'm gonna actually close this. All right. So right now, this was the assembly model that I created. And I'm going to start from scratch, and we're going to start a new one here. But basically, this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be pulling in all of the different parts. Okay. And then we're going to be arranging them, constraining them, putting them together. And we're going to be kind of thinking ahead of how we want to do this and how we want to, you know, create our assembly so that we have some of these features already in place. Namely, we want to start looking at, you know, how we want to arrange this so that when we have a section view that we can select on a plane and it's already there for us and it's easy to kind of, you know, create. So for instance, when I put my base in place on my model, I made sure that my center plane of my base went down and was coincident with the front plane of the model. When I create section views, these planes have to be at the model level. You can't select a plane in an individual part so that it shows up on the actual model here. So if you need that to happen, then you have to be in your model, and you have to create a plane coincident to one that's already on a part. But that's okay. That's no problem to do that. But you'll notice that if you're trying to put a section view in an assembly, it has to be that plane that you're using to reference or to the cutting has to be at the assembly level. Okay, just as a preface, because sometimes it's like, why isn't this working? I'm clicking on the plane, but it's too deep, if you would, to be able to reference. So so that's what you want to kind of think of. So when I bring my base in, again, I'm going to have that center plane, and I'm going to put it right on the front plane of my part. Okay, so so that's going to be the first part. Then as I kind of continue, the next part I'm going to be putting in place is going to be my slide jaw. Okay, so that's going to be the next part. And then I'm going to work on the parts that are here. So the collar, the vice screw, and then also that special key are going to be put in place kind of inside of that sliding jaw. Then the approach that I took is I went underneath, and then I put the slide key in place, as well as those two set screws going up from the bottom. And then I put in my handle rod and my handleballs with the pin in place. So that's really kind of the approach that I took. You'll notice that my section views go over, if you would, down the front view, so that I create a section view here, like looking down the middle. And then I have two local sections. One is going to be right here. Now, as we look at this assembly drawing, you're going to notice that there is not hatching along long shafts. That's not to the standard. We can't section those. They always have to be left open. But what we can do is do a local section so that we can see where another one is coming through. And that's what we see here. Now, these two lines going over the top, and I just can't get rid of them. It's just because they are, they're part of the local section, you know, spline that I created. Okay. So that's totally fine to just leave those in there. you're going to notice that there's these little parts, these little inner parts that are actually hatched solid. And we do that when we have small little internal features. Okay, so I picked that for the special key, for the pen, and then for the slide key in the right side view here. This is also another local section, okay, using one of the planes going through where a set of those going through where those set screws are going to be. Okay, so that was a plane that I had to put into the assembly. Well, the plane was already in my my sliding jaw, so I just had to create a plane coincident to that in our model of our assembly. And then over here, you're going to notice that most internal pieces like the set screw doesn't get section, just like we saw in the other assemblies that we did. So many of the items that we're looking at here, we've already applied in different ways, but we've just got a little bit more to work with. Now, the other thing I'm going to call your attention to is that I did put a pictorial in here, so make sure you add that. It is at a smaller scale than what my drawing is. Now, when I put this on the B-size drawing, it fit in nicely. And you don't have to, I mean, sometimes it's kind of nice to have it to like an even increment scale. But I thought 0.6 for my 3 views seemed like it fit best. And as we kind of look here, I mean, I think you would agree, right? Everything kind of fits and looks really good at that 0.6 for these 3. Then this view I did at, I believe, 0.4. Okay, that was on the side there. I did get rid of, it'll put that scale of 0.4 underneath. Again, always get rid of that only because it's just information on a drawing that's not necessary. There isn't any value really in that. It's only being used as a pictorial. So, so scale wise, it wouldn't be used for anything. So it's nice to just kind of clean it up and get it off of there. Now, the last thing that I want to show you is our bill of material. The bill of material is generated automatically, as we know, and that's already set up as part of the template or the drawing border. And you'll notice that I have many descriptions in here, but there's a couple of them that aren't, okay? And I left those there on purpose, but when you create your assembly, you are going to make them all to the actual name. And I left them there so that, excuse me, so that I could pull up this drawing and show you again how you update that common name so that it will reflect in here appropriately. Okay, so so expectation is that this first one's going to say base. The number 60, I forget exactly which one that is, but they're all going to have their corresponding name here, not part number. If you see the part numbers coming in, that means that you have to go back and you have to update that common name in the individual file. And it's not hard to do. It's not hard to do. But then the part number will come up here, and then the quantities will automatically come in as well. Okay. So, and then we're using one of those countersunk cap screws. So as we know, it doesn't come in with a description, but the part number is going to populate over in the part number column, which is totally fine. All right. So that's what I want to kind of point out here for you as we're looking through. And then we'll be back to this. So let's start out by going back to Creo. And I am going to be starting a new assembly. So I'm going to click on new here. You have to be in your working directory. I'm going to create a new assembly. My file name. Now I have created a couple of these. So make sure that you use 25,000. I have been doing this a couple times, practicing, kind of moving things around. So I think I'm on 25,004. Okay. So and then common name we'll put in there, drill, and then drill jig assembly. Now in the common name, you can have spaces and make sure that you use capital letters. Otherwise, it's going to go in there in lowercase. And as we know, all the text on any drawing, whether it's a detail or an assembly, has to be in all caps. Okay, all the time. Okay. And now we have a blank assembly here. So we want to put in our first feature. Our first feature is going to be the base. It's just kind of what everything else is going to fit down into. So you want to kind of strategically pick a part that is going to kind of, you know, be exactly that. So I'm going to go and I'm going to click on assembly. I'm going to pull up the 25010, which is the part number for my base. I'm going to open it. And then this is going to automatically come up. So, so when I'm in my assembly mode, you're going to notice that that part comes in and it kind of like automatically is going to place it where it thinks it should go. All right. Now, right now, the right plane, the front plane, and the top plane are in these orientations. But as I said earlier, remember, if we want to put a section view through the middle or down that front plane, it has to be at the front plane of the actual assembly. So I wouldn't be able to select the front plane on my base, even though it's going down the center. The only one available to me is this one right here. So what I want to do is I want to make coincident the front plane of my base and the front plane of my assembly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do coincident. I'm going to select that front plane, select that front plane, and now you'll notice that it moved it so that they now share, if you would, the same space. Okay. And then after this, there really isn't anything else to connect to. So all we're going to do is we're going to do new constraint, and we're going to click fixed. Okay. And remember, we know that it's fully constrained once we get our part turning gold in this view. Okay. And once it's there, I'm going to say, okay. Now it's still gray. I don't mind. I'm going to leave my base probably gray throughout, but I do like to have the shading with edges because then I can see that. Okay. But I am going to get rid of the two callouts that are here. So it has the quarter 20 socket head, or the quarter 20 taps here. I'm going to left click, and then I'm going to long right click, and I'm just going to click hide. Okay. And then that one goes away. And then I've got to kind of reposition this a little bit, see if I can grab it so that I'm not over the top of any planes. I'm going to left click on it to select it, long right click, and then hit hide, and then it goes away. And then I'll keep the other ones there. It just kind of, you know, declutters it, if you would. We really don't need it in the assembly mode. So, so it's nice to kind of get rid of those. So it's not, they're not cluttering things up. All right. So that's our first piece. Our base is in place. Okay. The next piece that I'm going to pull in is going to be my sliding jaw. So my sliding jaw, part number wise, is going to be 25050. So I'm going to go up to assembly, or assemble 25050. I'm going to be pulling it in, and you'll notice that it comes in purple. And now I have the opportunity to move it around. What I like to do, and what I've told you in the past, is we kind of want to take away some of the decision making for Creo. So what I try to do is I try to put this kind of as close to around-ish where I'm expecting it to be, so that so again, Creo doesn't have to make as many decisions. Okay. So now in terms of where this needs to be, is I want my axis here to be in line with the axis on the front of my base. Okay, because I'm going to be putting that lead screw through there. So I want these two to be coincident. Now there's a lot of planes here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start unclicking those. I'll have to bring them back at times, but I'm going to get rid of the planes, the system display, the point display, but I am going to leave the axes here because I'm going to need those, especially for this one. So it kind of cleans things up. So I'm not clicking all those different items, but I am left with my axes here. So I am going to go to coincident, and I'm going to select this axis and this axis. And now you'll notice that these two are in line with one another. Okay, so that's one. I'm not gold yet. Okay, so that means that I'm not fully constrained. So you'll notice that as we look at our little globe here, I still can move back and forth. Okay, I still can move back and forth. So what I want to do is I find the easiest way is to add a dimension between this face, if you would, and this face here. Okay, now I'm going to kind of eyeball where I think I want this to be, and where it's at is pretty darn close. So I'm going to kind of put it here-ish, okay, because I'm going to have I mean, when I'm looking at my assembly, I want it to be a little bit further down. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new constraint. I'm going to go down to the constraint type. Distance is what I want to add. And I want to select this face of my base and this face of my sliding jaw. And now I can put an offset distance in here. The number that's there, like it's measured at where I kind of eyeballed it, is 2.4637. That number is really not important. I'm going to accept it. I'm not going to even change it, but you could put it, if you wanted to put it at 2.5, you could, all right? But it's really nothing more than giving, you know, this a place to like land rather than having the ability to float back and forth. So I'm simply going to accept that and say, okay. Now, here too, you'll notice that I'm going to change the color. I think it's nice to change the colors because again, you can see the differences in the parts. So I'm going to select the sliding jaw appearance, and I'm going to show it as red. Okay. And again, we've got these call outs. So I'm going to left click on those, get rid of those, right click a little bit longer, hide. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Left click, right click longer, hide. And underneath here, sometimes if it's on those faces, it's so frustrating. I click it. I might have to. Why is that so hard? I don't know if I'm going to get them. I should have done it when it was like free. Here we go. There. Now I can grab it. You have to grab it when it's not like over the top of the part. Right click and hide. Left click, right click and hide. If you do a quick right click, you won't catch it, but you have to kind of hold it a little bit longer. All right. Good time to do a quick save on this. So we've got that here. Okay. Any questions so far? All right. So yes. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to come over. So yeah. Is it the collar you're putting in or the lead screw? All right. Well, that's going to be the next part that I do. So hang on and we'll kind of see what's going on. Now, couple of things. You're going to notice that out in the front here in my design tree, I don't have any of those rectangles. If you have rectangles, you don't have it fully constrained. If you go back, for instance, and we select on this and we edit that definition, when you're unconstrained, it's not going to be gold. And you're also going to have that globe. And whatever is not white is not locked down. Okay. So before, remember before I put that distance in, I had that arrow that I could move it back and forth. That's going to be what you're going to look for on that globe, so that it kind of helps you to decide like, okay, what do I still need to constrain? Okay. Because it needs to be locked down. So, so you'll notice that I'm good here, and you don't want to really move on until you have this fully constrained. All right. So the next part that I'm going to look at is I'm going to put the collar in place here in the front part of my sliding jaw. So my collar is number 2 on my assembly, and it's 25015. So I'm going to say file open 25015. All right. Oh, shoots. That's nice. I should have said assemble, not open, Kelly. Duh. Let me go back to the assembly I'm working on over here. And I want to say assemble, not open, 25015. Sorry about that. Okay. So now it pulled it in. Okay. And you'll notice the orientation that we have here. Now, this needs to rotate around, okay, so that these little grooves right here are to the outside, or this side, if you would, of my sliding jaw. Okay, so my grooves are going to be to the outside. Also, the threaded portion, which is the larger part of the collar, is on the front part there. Okay, and And we are going to first constrain it so that this center and the center of the hole here are going to be in line with one another, coincident. And then we're going to have this front face right here is going to be coincident with the front face right here. All right. And those two, I believe, should fully define it for us or fully constrain it. So I am going to go to coincident first. I end up using coincident for a lot of things. All right. That's my like first go-to. And then other things, then I kind of add in like the distances, you know, once in a while, or parallel for orientation of something. But coincident is one that I use a lot. All right. So I'm going to grab this center and that center. And now you'll notice that they're in line with one another. Okay. Still purple, so I'm not fully constrained. So I'm going to click on new constraint. And the next one I'm going to do is coincident again. And I am going to say the front face here of my sliding jaw and the front face of my collar. My collar turned that gold color, so that means it's fully constrained. And my globe went away as well. My globe went away. Was that helpful at all? All right, I'll have to look at it a little bit. So the sliding jaw disappears.
Yeah. Is it like what part of it disappears visually? No, it disappears from the tree and visually, but now I have to go out of trying to constrain it and everything like that.
Okay, I'll have to look. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't encountered that. So so this is going to be then the placement there, and then I can hit OK, and then you'll notice that it's in place. Here too, I'm going to change the appearance and I'm going to make that yellow. Okay. All right. Notice again, everything is fully constrained out front here. So I think it's a good idea to do a quick save after each one of the items that you're looking at. All right. The next one I'm going to do, I'm going to be putting in place the vice screw. Okay. So the vice screw, I'm looking here. I think that's number 60, the one that I don't have called out. So I'm going to do an assemble. Number 60, open. Yep, that's the vice screw. And you'll notice that it's in the opposite direction. So again, I am going to use this little globe, the green. I'm going to turn because I need it in this direction. Okay, so it's going to be going like this. I also need it up a little bit. Okay, and as I move this way, I'll kind of pull it over. And again, it doesn't have to be perfectly in position, but I just like to, I like to give Creo as few things to decide on as possible. All right. So now my first constraint is going to be making the axis of the vice screw and the axis of the base. Hey, Kiefer, you want to grab one of the handouts here? I'm going to make those two coincident. So I'm going to grab coincident, center, and center. So now those two are in line with one another. Still not fully constrained. Okay, that's okay. I've got a little bit more work to do here. And now what I need to do is I need to get my part inside of there. Now, as we look, I think we've got to look underneath on our assembly. Look at my assembly here. I'm going to go here. I'm going to zoom in. Okay. You'll notice that this is my collar. This is that vice screw coming in. And then these two that are darkened in are my special key. So I got to put my special key in. And then that's going to be on the back side of where my collar is. So I'm going to pull another part in before I get this vice screw fully constrained. Okay. Because I'm going to need it to do that. So go back over here, and I'm just going to hit OK right now. But you'll notice I've got the rectangle out front of my vice screw part number. Okay, that's okay. I just have to make sure before I'm done with my assembly that has to be fully resolved, and it will be once we get it in place. But now I'm going to assemble another piece in here, and it is going to be the special key, which is 25055. Okay, and you'll notice that it came in. Now, if you go to the middle globe part here, you can kind of move it over into place. And what we want to do is I'm going to rotate it around because it's going to clip in right over this groove right here. Okay, it's going to clip in right over that groove right there. All right. So. Trying to think how I want to assemble this. Now on this part, because it's not a like a full circle going all the way through, you'll notice that there's not an axis that goes through this part to make coincident. So instead what we need to do, and there's a couple ways that you can do it. I'm just trying to think of the easiest. We can make coincident the surface here of the groove on our vice screw to the surface on that inside, if you would, of our rounded portion of our special key. So I think that's what we'll do. So, so I'm going to first do a coincident. You could do automatic. Sometimes it kind of knows what you want, but if I know what I'm going to be using or it's going to change to, I might as well just use what it is. So I'm going to click on this surface right here, and then I'm going to move this around, and maybe I'll move it this way. Zoom out, move, rotate, shift and pan in, and then I want to make this surface coincident with that. Okay, so it's on the same line right now, but you'll notice that I need to move it along that axis to come in contact then with, and I believe I'm going to use this surface here to be coincident to that surface there. So that'll be my next constraint. So I'm going to do a new, and I'm going to do another coincident, this surface to that surface right there. There we go. We're fully constrained, or gold. Okay. Now I am going to change the color here, and I'm going to change that to, make that blue. All right. And we'll change the color of our vice screw. What color should we make that? Green, maybe, huh? Green would be good. We haven't used green yet. Okay, so we have those two together. Now what we need to do, you'll notice that out front here, we've got the two unconstrained parts. So I need to go back to my vice screw and get that constrained. All right. Now, let's see here. We know that this has to fit on, I'm going to zoom a little bit further in here if I can. This part right here has to fit on the end of the collar. Okay, on the end of the collar. So if I go back to Creo, all right, what I need to do is, I can't see on the inside of my sliding jaw. So I'm going to actually hide my sliding jaw. So I'm going to click on my sliding jaw, which is 2550. And you're going to notice when I left click on it, I have the ability to hide it. Okay, so I want to. So I'm going to hide my sliding jaw. So now what's floating out there is just the collar. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to, and I'm going to edit the definition on my vice screw, which is 25060. And I'm going to scooch this in. All right. Now, because I am focusing on only my vice screw right now, you'll notice that my special key is no longer on there. That's okay, because once I get this in position, it'll automatically, be in the right place. So what I'm going to do is I am going to add a constraint, and I'm going to do coincident again on this surface to that surface. And now my vice screw is fully constrained. Okay. And I'm going to hit OK. And now, because it is fully constrained, my special key is in place. And now you'll notice that it is also fully constrained as well. So good. All right. Better do a quick save on this. Quick save on that. Questions so far? All right. All right. This is good. This is good. All right. Now I'm going to go back to, and I'm going to unhide my vice screw, and I look good. I look good. All right. Okay. Now, what I am going to do is I am going to stop the recording right now. I'm just going to kind of check if it, for those who are maybe following along, I'm going to check if anybody has any questions as you're working. And then we'll come back and we'll kind of continue on. That way the videos aren't so long. Okay. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to stop and then we will be back. So I'm